All right, so much art history and never enough time to cover it all. So let's go run through the art museum. Okay, so we're going to get into degenerate art. Write this down. What does the word degenerate mean? Say that louder. I have a fan in my ear. Yes, it's a derogatory term. It's like the term of a criminal or somebody that will have low moral standings. So we're going to go to Germany, and Hitler became an art collector in the 1930s. We all know that he had a passion for art in his youth, and Hitler and his Nazi art collectors collected art on an industrial scale. Right, that means a lot. And what they liked, they took. And Hitler also used his own money to buy works of art. Hitler loved traditional art, and Hitler hated modern art. In 1933, he rises to power and he quickly cleanses the German culture of the so called degeneracy. And what is that degeneracy? What is he calling degenerate? It's modern art. So he does an extensive purge of degenerate art, and which is a total assault on modernism. And people wonder, is he taking his revenge on art, like the art system that kept him from going to art school? Is it that modern art snubbed him and now he's getting his revenge? So here's what he starts doing. Um, Artists and musicians started to be discharged from teaching positions. Anybody that was not in line with the Nazi ideals, they were fired. And museum directors that displayed modern art were fired and replaced with party members. He says, "You're fired." And she's like, "What?" And then conversely, you're hired, and you see that little Nazi logo on her chest. All right, so that she is in line with the Nazi philosophy. Also, they were openly ridiculing modern art. So here we have the Nazi Party is pointing at modern art and says, "Do you see this modern art right here? Yeah, we're going to take it and sell it to other countries, and if no one will buy it, we're going to destroy it," she says with an evil laugh. So they started seizing the art from the museums. And then Germany sold the art to other countries. And the art sales were then, the money that they made from the art sales went to the Nazi party. And so the Nazis were quite pragmatic in that sense. So they're trying to sell off art as quickly as possible, but the art sales are not so quick. Also, nobody wants to buy art stolen from the people and being oppressed. Like it's like bad taste to buy that. So they sold it for very little money, and they also traded it for racially appropriate art. They would have bonfires. The Nazis destroyed so many books and bonfires. They had book burnings, and then they would throw art on top of those fires. In March 1939, 5,000 artworks were burned in one bonfire. 1,000 paintings and sculptures were burned, 3,000 watercolor drawings in front of the Berlin Fire Department. All right, so Nazi is on this purge of the modern art in Germany. So I want you to know these two art shows. There's one art show called the Great German Art Exhibit, and another art show called Degenerate Art. All right, so I'm going to show you some artworks in the Great German Art Exhibit. So this exhibit is pro-Nazi. This is the artwork that the Nazis love. So we're going to see what kind of artworks they love. In 1937, an open invitation to German artists resulted in 15,000 works of art being submitted, and they were put into the Great German Art Exhibition. Uh, and these were leading examples of Aryan art. And they were intended to show the more classical and quote unquote racially pure type of art advocated by the Nazi regime. So here are some photographs of that art exhibit. Lots of large sculptures of tall and heroic figures, paintings of heroic soldiers, classical imagery, impersonal facial expressions. They had heroic proportions, and they recall the Greek ideals. And the face is often stoic or lacking any kind of reality. So here's an example of the ideal male body and the ideal female body. And you can see the stoicism in the face that they have. All right, here's a photograph of one of the rooms, and then I'm going to show you lots and lots of nudes in the great exhibition. All right, here's some of their paintings showing men as being very muscular, showing women with the appropriate proportions. And then, of course, they would show Hitler. This is propaganda, right? Showing Hitler as a knight. This is pure Nazi propaganda. This painting was damaged. Do you see the damage in the face? Right. So it wasn't damaged when it was on display. It was damaged after the Allies had conquered Germany, and the soldiers saw that and, I don't know, threw something at it or poked something through it. But there are scratches and a hole on Hitler's face. This is a popular theme for the Third Reich, is to have portraits of the Fuhrer. These became so numerous that Hitler finally decreed that only one would be displayed officially at each annual Greater German Art Exhibition. And the painting became a very popular in poster and postcard form. But again, we have other propaganda. This looks a lot like the Soviet propaganda, does it not? Here we have Hitler surrounded by his loyal soldiers. Here we have Hitler as a leader, and look at how everybody's listening to him. Does this not reek of Soviet propaganda? Right. But then another side of this Nazi art was images like this, showing the good German people. Here is a mother feeding her child. You know, what's more noble than that? This is saying that we Germans are good. And then there's also paintings like this on the left. Paintings like this on the left. That does this not look like a Grant Wood painting? So then, is Grant Wood, was that propaganda for America? Here they are portraying their own homeland as full of food and full of bounty, and it's a very positive image of your home country. All right, so I've shown you what the Nazis loved. That was in the Great German Art Exhibition. Now we're going to look at the other exhibition of degenerate art. Now, degenerate art is the most shameful episode of art history. The Art National Socialist Party had rejected on ideological grounds. So they everything that they rejected that artists turned in to go on display went into this exhibition. It's made up of art not considered Aryan, and the show was conceived of by Nazis to condemn modern art and to show its perversions. Does this sound familiar? Right, the salon. Right, it was the salon that was meant to embarrass those forward-thinking artists, but in that case, it turned to backfire because people were really interested. Like, ooh, what's next? What's different? What's new? They seized about 5,238 works that they deemed degenerate, and 650 artworks were confiscated from German art museums of about 112 artists. The exhibit was designed to promote the idea that modernism was a conspiracy by people who hated German decency. Modern art was frequently identified as Jewish and Bolshevist, which I think is funny because at this time, the Bolsheviks are completely stripping modern art out of their culture. So they're saying that modern art was Bolshevist. And the day before the exhibition started, Hitler delivered a speech declaring a merciless war on cultural disintegration. Degenerate art, works that insult German feeling or destroy or confuse the natural form or simply reveal an absence of adequate manual and artistic skill. All right, so let's take a look at this degenerate art. Look at how the artworks are spaced. Look at how crowded they are together. That would give the viewer a sense of claustrophobia. Do you see that? And then also notice that painting down there. Not all the artworks were hung on the wall. These artworks were considered so bad that they didn't even bother hanging them all. So some of them they just put on the floor. As an insult. The exhibition space was chosen for its dark and crowded spaces to make people uncomfortable with modern art that they were seeing. And they're trying to create the opposite of a good art museum. Some of the artwork was hung at an angle. Right? They didn't bother making sure that everything was level. And then also notice that they purposely chose walls that had dents in them to make it look like this place is not special. And then they would have messages written on the walls next to the art. I'm going to read some of these messages. Listen to what is said on this wall about the artwork. Quote, insolent mockery of the divine under centrist rule. Quote, revelation of Jewish racial soul. Quote, an insult to German womanhood. Quote, the ideal cretin and whore. Quote, madness becomes method. Quote, nature as seen by sick minds. And much worse things that I cannot repeat here in the classroom. Artist quotes are taken out of context to embarrass and discredit the artist. Next to many of the paintings were labels indicating how much money a museum spent on the artwork. You ever been shocked by how much people spend on modern art? Isn't that shocking how much people spend on it? They were doing the same thing here. They're saying, look how crazy this is. People are spending so much money on this. So the context is that they're saying many paintings were bought in a post-war Weimar period with hyperinflation. For example, a loaf of bread was 223 billion German marks. It was just so false what they were putting up here. It was such lies. So in this context, yeah, prices of art are going to be exaggerated. All right, and then even sculptures were put on the floor without a sculpture stand. The people that came in were given a book or a pamphlet. And in that pamphlet, this is an actual photograph of the pamphlet. And they're comparing works of art to people with physical and mental deformities. They're saying that this is the art of these people. This is the art that people like this would make, or this is the art about people like this. And in an era of where they're trying to create a perfect race, that's almost like the Spartans, that any child born with any deformities, they threw it off a cliff. And that's the same kind of message here. They're showing artwork by mental patients and showing them alongside modern art and saying, look, they're the same, right? So therefore, modern artists must be insane. The art was seen as a pollution of the Aryan race, and modern art was an insult to the German feeling, an insult to the Aryan race. And so modern art was promoted, and also modern art promoted communism. The physical deformity was related to modern art, and modern degenerate art reflected mental or physical disabilities were manifestations of racial deficiencies. That's the kind of stuff that was in this book. So why? Why all this effort to criticize a few paintings? Art is a very powerful thing, and certain forms of art can be more powerful than others. The visual art is important because within 5 seconds you get the message. What has been seen cannot be unseen. And the image of two men cuddling might give the message that homosexuality is okay. It's not just about the paintings, it's about the ideas that paintings push. If I have an idea and I write it in 1,000 words, not many people will read it. But if I communicate my idea through an image that people will get in 5 seconds, that is powerful. And that is why marketing uses images. And the ideas of modern artists are dangerous to the Nazis. And other totalitarian governments just hide and destroy the art, but the Nazis chose to try to discredit modern art. So the two shows, one shows the art that the Nazis loved, and one showed that the art that the Nazis hated. The expectation was that people would go to the Degenerate Art show and think that's bad art, and then go to the other show and think that's good art. But the Degenerate Art show was an absolute blockbuster. People stood in line to go and see it. It's the same thing that the French did to discredit those French artists. The German art exhibit was described as mediocre by modern sources. More than four times the people went to the Degenerate Art than the German art show. And the irony is, it became a compliment. It was one of the most successful art shows of all time. The intention of Degenerate Art Show was to laugh at modern art, but it didn't work out that way. The Degenerate Art Show unintentionally promoted modern art. And unintentionally, Hitler did more to promote modernism than anybody before. It was advertised as, this is the last time you will be able to see this art. But the unintended consequence was it encouraged people to go in record numbers. 2 million people went to go visit that show. So I have some inconsistencies in Nazi logic. These artworks, right, that you're looking at, these are war paintings, and these are okay. This is acceptable German art. It's realistic, it's militaristic, it's pro war, it glorifies war. But these war paintings are unacceptable. This shows the brutality of war. And on the left is an artist I did not go into, Otto Dix, and his paintings all look like this. It's horrible images of the war. Now the Kirchner is I talked about that, and he was showing the mental effects that he had as a soldier. All right. But this is bad art. These would be degenerate. Do you guys remember this guy? This is Emil Nold, and he was the German expressionist who painted the mask. And he was the irony with this one is this guy was a Nazi. He had Nazi sympathies. He approved of the Nazi message. All right, but because of his art, he was demonized. He was called degenerate. And here's one of the inconsistencies is that the one on the left was an approved Nazi artwork, but it was done by a Jewish artist. The one on the right was a degenerate artwork that was done by a total Nazi. He believed in what they were selling. And then his artwork, Nolde, was the most attacked artist by the Nazis. He had 1,000 artworks confiscated by the Nazis. And he was the artist with the most artworks on display in the Degenerate Art Show. Despite being a Nazi, he was persecuted by the ones that he looked up to. Despite his unconditional love for his country and despite his hatred for Jews, the Nazis still persecuted him. You guys remember that painting, right? So in 1941, he received a letter from the Nazis forbidding him to paint. It was called the Malverbot, and the German for forbidden to paint. Even in the privacy of his own home, he was not allowed to paint. He was also prohibited from buying art supplies and from exhibiting work. So he started a series of paintings called Unpainted Pictures. And these are small sheets of paper to be plans for future bigger works when he would be allowed to paint again. So he would get regular visits from the Gestapo who would come in and inspect his house looking for contraband, and they were looking for art supplies. They were looking for new artworks. So he worked on small pieces of paper so he could hide them. And he worked, instead of working in oil paint like he used to, because oil paint is it has a very distinct smell. You can smell it when that's painting with oil paint. He worked with watercolor that had no smell and it dried very quickly. So he was able to continue to make art even after he was forbidden to do so. Do you guys remember this guy, Franz Marc? In 1916, he died during World War I as a German soldier. After the war, the Berlin National Gallery acquired this painting, The Tower of Blue Horses. The Nazis confiscated it and included it in degenerate art. But all the German veterans protested, saying, hey, this guy fought and died for your country. This guy fought and died for Germany. And so then his artwork was pulled from the exhibit. Do you guys remember this guy, Andre Derain? Right? Hitler hated his Fauvist artworks. So in the 1930s, this is what he was painting, right? And Hitler approved. By the 1930s, Derain had publicly condemned modern art and returned to the classical tradition. Isn't that sad? That makes me so sad. right? To be so scared to speak your mind. To He was on a journey, and his artwork pushed modern art past the post impressionists. He was part of a huge movement that pushed modern art further along towards its end, right? 0 degree, I guess. But the Germans were interested in Derain's classical style of his later works, and they believed them to represent upper French culture. And he aligned himself with the Nazi Party during their occupation of France. And he was commissioned to paint the family of Hitler's foreign minister, but he rejected that commission. But he did accept an invitation to tour Germany in 1941, and he eventually became quite involved in Germany's propaganda machine. Following the war, the French considered him a traitor. When questioned regarding his support of the Reich, Derain denied helping the Germans and said, quote, he had gone because he felt that art had nothing to do with politics and was, in fact, above it, unquote. So his friendship with the Nazis earned him a questionable place in the history of modern painting, and it compromised his contributions to modern art. This guy made such a contribution to modern art. How are we doing on time? All right, we're still good. Do you guys remember this guy, Kirchner? All right, he was the DeBrook artist, and he was in the army in World War One. He had a mental breakdown, and he was discharged from the army. He was addicted to morphine and alcohol. But in 1930s, Hitler labeled modern art degenerate, and rich clients stopped buying his work. Because if you're a rich person and you're buying modern art, you're going to be in trouble with the Nazis. So he feels that within his own country, his work will not be known. So he was being diminished, and the Nazis confiscated and destroyed 600 pieces of Kirchner's work. This was, do you guys remember Damnatio Memoriae? Yeah, so that's what's happening here. He was afraid of being sent to the concentration camps. So Kirchner, he fled to Austria, and the Nazis invaded Austria. And he was hiding in I think it was like a farmhouse, and he got word that the Nazis were 12 miles away. So he burned his own paintings, and he went out in the snow and shot himself twice through the heart. It just goes to show the fear of being discovered and being, fear of being sent to the concentration camps. He'd rather kill himself. All right, I want to go back to this room right here. This is the room that had all the nudes in it. And I'm going to briefly look at this painting right here. Do you guys remember the story of Leda and the Swan? All right. Are you going to tell me that this is not degenerate and this is? So it boggles my mind how twisted the Nazis were. All right, after the show, the Nazis went to museums and confiscated the rest of the degenerate art. The first time that they confiscated it, it was rushed, but this time it was methodical. They visited over 100 cities, and they confiscated 16,000 works of art. And that is going to lead us into the great Nazi art theft, which I will talk about tomorrow. Yes. Yeah, right. That's so, but that boggles the mind. Like, how could a Christian do what he did? Yeah. Yeah. How could a Christian do what he did? He's crazy. That's people. Right. Here's one thing I can say about religion. People use religion to do very bad things. The Protestants and the Catholics, they were Christian, but they were killing each other. So I don't blame the religion. I blame the people. And Christianity's gotten a really bad rap for the horrible things that people have done in the name of Christianity. You think about like the Spanish going into Mexico and destroying the whole culture of the Mayans and the Aztecs. Although the Aztecs were pretty good at destroying too, but